All right, I will call to order City of LeGrand special session this evening. The session is being broadcast or streamed on the Eastern Oregon Alive TV Facebook page, and we are accepting questions and comments in written form, hopefully before this morning. And with that, I will ask for a roll call, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Steve Clements.
Here.
Gary Lillard.
Here.
Corinne Dudo.
Here.
Nicole Howard.
Here.
Marianne Miesner.
Here.
Justin Rock.
Here.
Jim Whitbeck.
Here.
All right. We're all participating in electronic communication for the record. We have an agenda. We will not be accepting public comments this evening. And we do have a public hearing, which is to look at a community development block grant. And I will open that public hearing and ask for a staff report. Do we need to read the conditions for the public hearing, or?
No, we do not.
Okay, so then let's see, what have I got here? Let's just have the staff report then, and then I've got something I need to read.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. The City Council has already granted authority through action that you took on the 1st of April to apply for and accept and designate myself as the certifying officer for all actions necessary to apply for, accept, and administer emergency community development block grant funding. One of the things that is required to receive that funding when we are allowed to apply is to conduct a public hearing. And this was not a requirement that was waived by HUD. So we have made the necessary public notice of the meeting. We included provisions that allowed for individuals to submit written comments in advance. We did not receive any written comments. And what we need to do at this juncture is to read in its entirety the notice of public hearing. And then following that, then the mayor can indicate that that has been done. We can then adjourn this meeting. We'll move into our work sessions. And the council will meet again tomorrow evening, also electronically, for the sole purpose of approving the minutes from tonight's meeting, so that when we get the green light to apply for the emergency community development block grant funding, we have those approved minutes that are one of the required attachments for the application. I checked with Business Oregon this morning, and they did not have any information on when they would be accepting those applications. So we're still in a holding pattern. I believe we're the first community that's actually conducting the required public hearing. So that puts us in pretty good shape for that, and be happy to answer whatever questions you may have.
Questions for Robert? The only question I have, Robert, is the notice of public hearing and public notice is in italics. So I'll read you. I need to read through all of that until to the very last paragraph that says on May 19th. Do I read that as well?
Well, actually, I was going to read it for you, but Mayor, if you want to do it, that's fine.
Do not let me deny you of the pleasure.
Okay. If you're ready, I'll go ahead and read. I'll go ahead and read that public notice. And there were, as stated, there were no public comments that were received.
Okay, please do. Thank you.
Okay. City of LeGrand notice of public hearing and public notice 2020 Community Development Block Grant from Business Oregon. The City of LeGrand is eligible to apply for a 2020 Community Development Block Grant from Business Oregon. Community Development Block Grant funds come from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. The grants can be used for public facilities and housing improvements, primarily for persons with low and moderate incomes. Approximately $12 million will be awarded to Oregon non-metropolitan cities and counties in 2020. The maximum grant that a city or county can receive for emergency small business and micro enterprise assistance is $150,000. The maximum award for micro enterprise assistance and training is $100,000. The City of LaGrande may prepare an application for a 2020 Community Development Block Grant from Business Oregon for micro enterprise assistance and training in Union, Wallow, and Baker counties, which would consist of classroom training for micro entrepreneurs. It is estimated that the proposed project will benefit at least 40 persons, of whom 51% will be low or moderate income. The City of LaGrande is also preparing an application for a 2020 Community Development Block Grant from Business Oregon for emergency small business and micro enterprise assistant grant program in Union County, which would consist of grant to qualifying entrepreneurs and small businesses who have been negatively impacted by the COVID-19 crisis. It is estimated that the proposed project will benefit at least 15 persons, of whom 100% will be low or moderate income. The City Council of the City of Grande will hold two special sessions on Monday, May 18th, 2020, and Tuesday, May 19th, 2020. Both special sessions will begin at 6 p.m. via electronic communications due to Executive Order 20-16. The purpose of the special session on May 18th is to conduct a public hearing for the City Council to obtain citizen views and to respond to questions and comments about community development housing needs, especially the need for low and moderate income persons, as well as other needs in the community that might be assisted with a community development block grant project and the proposed project. The public hearing will be available for viewing via the city's scheduled Charter Communications Channel 180 beginning at 6 p.m. on May 18th, 2020 on the LaGrande Live website at https://lagrandealive.tv/city-events or the Eastern Oregon Alive TV Facebook page. The purpose of the second special session on May 19, 2020 is for the City Council to approve the minutes of the May 18, 2020 special session and will be available for viewing on the City of LaGrande City Manager's Facebook page at www.facebook.com/City of LaGrande beginning at 6 p.m. on May 19, 2020. Written comments are welcome and must be received by 9 a.m. on Monday, May 18, 2020. The written comments will be read during the public comment section of the public hearing on May 18, 2020. Written comments will be considered by the City Council in deciding whether to apply. Please email public comments to rstrop@cityoflagrande.org or mail them to Post Office Box 670, attention City Manager, LaGrande, Oregon 97850. Persons with disabilities can contact the Assistant to the City Manager at 541-962-1309 if you need any special accommodations to provide comments. More information about Oregon Community Development Block Grants, the proposed project, and records about the city's past use of community block grant funds is available by contacting the City Manager's office at 541-962-1309. Permanent involuntary displacement of persons or businesses is not anticipated as a result of the proposed project. If displacement becomes necessary, alternatives will be examined to minimize the displacement and provide required reasonable benefits to those displaced. Any low and moderate income housing which is demolished or converted to another use will be replaced. That concludes the public notice, and much of that information is required by HUD, even though it really doesn't apply to the type of project that we're doing because we're not building any housing, we're not demolishing anything. So Mayor, back to you.
All right. I just have one question, Robert, since, and this is procedural. You just read a notice about a meeting that we're currently in with lots of times and dates that happened already.
Yes.
What's the purpose behind doing that? And is there, I'm just curious why we have to read this out loud in order to fulfill some needs.
It's a specific requirement by HUD that to apply for community development block grant funds, you have to give proper notice and you have to read into the record the proper notice. You may recall we did this a couple years ago. It's one of those making certain that everybody is made aware of precisely what we're doing. There are some federal requirements for specific language that has to be presented in this way. There's no question that we did our proper notice, that we again gave the notice. And yes, some of the things have already occurred, but what we were doing was reading in its entirety the notice that was published in a timely fashion in advance of the meeting.
Okay, very good. Any questions or discussions on the public notice or the application? Okay, I'm not seeing any or hearing anything. I see some head shakes or wags or something like this, so we're good.
Nods.
So that the minutes will reflect that the city council conducted a public hearing regarding the 2020 Community Development Block Grant from Business Oregon, and that the public notice was read aloud during the meeting. We don't have to vote then.
You do not.
All right. So unless there's any other elements or anything else for this item, Robert?
No, sir.
City manager comments?
No, just appreciate everybody being in attendance so we could get that important piece done for the block grant funding.
Okay.
Robert,
Yes.
Robert, this is Kayla.
Hi, Kayla.
From a procedural standpoint, nobody stated whether there was actually public comment that I heard. Do we need to state that into record? That you did not receive any?
Yeah, I think I'm certain that I mentioned that, but I think it would be important to have Stacy include in the minutes that no public comments were received, to highlight that.
Okay,
Good point.
just
Thank
wanted to
you.
make sure. Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm pretty certain that I heard Robert say that there were no public comments received. So, councilor comments? Or if not, I'm going to adjourn this meeting, the special session, but stay on the line. You can mute your video. We'll be back in roughly 15 to 17 minutes for.
Well, actually, Mayor, we can go ahead and start with the work session and spend a couple minutes. Let me check
Okay.
real quick. I know that the individual from Nampa had called in and was planning on jumping back on about 10 or 15 minutes prior. So it might be okay just to kind of hang in place till they jump in, or we could have just kind of I could just talk a little bit about the background for the streetscape piece to save us some time on the back end.
Robert or Steve, would you like me to call Kristen and let her know we're ready? Would that be a preferable option?
My inclination is to do that. And I don't. I'm less comfortable with. Although I'd like to see us save some time with having anything with the streetscape stuff before, like we get this little choppy bit and then into the youth thing. I think, Gary, go ahead and call her, get her on. Let's start with that fresh. And then when we're done with that, then we can move into the streetscape stuff.
Okay, I'll step away for a bit. I got to go get my phone.
Okay.
Sounds good. Thanks, Mayor.
Yes.
We'll just
All right, good evening. We have a work session this evening. There are two elements of that work session. The first one is a guest speaker from the Nampa, Idaho Mayor's Office, who will talk to us a little bit about how their youth are involved with city activities and city doings. And once we've had a chance to grill her and pick her brain as much as we can, we will move into a completely different subject, and that is the Adams Avenue streetscape futures and next phases. So, Gary, I'm gonna sort of turn this over to you, perhaps for an introduction,
Yes,
and
absolutely.
then
Yeah,
we'll go from there.
sure thing. Well, introducing Kristen Pudlow, as Steve indicated, she's an assistant in the Nampa, Idaho Mayor's Office, handles, among other things, the youth involvement program they have there. We've had a number of communications. I was really surprised at how much they do with the youth. There's just an awful lot going on, and it sounds like they've even managed to come up with some things that they can do during this pandemic situation. So I'll have Kristen give us a little preview of what she has to offer, and then we can fire away.
Good, thank you very much. Take it away, Chris.
Good afternoon, Mayor, City Council, and everybody else joining. Thank you for inviting me to speak about Mayor's Teen Council. I'm pretty passionate about Mayor's Teen Council. To be honest, when I first started my job, it was not something I was looking forward to. Just because I come from the military and my ability to work with youth, I was nervous I was going to be Sergeant Pudlow instead of Kristen, and that made me nervous about my communication style and skills. But to be honest, I've been nothing but inspired, and I see a genuine need for these types of mentorship programs. Working in the mayor's office, I'm currently working in emergency management, so I have to disclose that, but working in the mayor's office for almost 2 years as a citizen support specialist gave me the opportunity to get to know the community, and as well as probably 65% of my time is spent educating citizens on what services the city provides, what our legal jurisdiction is versus, what a state level entity does. And so I really started to see Mayor's Teen Council as a sincere and critical need to educate future generations so they can understand what their government does and what it provides for them, and so that they can have an interest to be involved. And I have to be honest, these kids are very interested when they start to realize we have like a speed dating thing that we do every year where you go around the room and we have a department have each table. And this year we were going to have the Chamber of Commerce there for a table and a couple of businesses, but they go and they have a 2-minute timer and they can ask each department questions very quickly about what they do. And when you give them those kind of quick introduction opportunities to just quickly understand what the city does for them, like provide clean water, police and fire, those types of things, they start to understand the relevance of the Mayor's Teen Council and what they can learn. We teach them about state government as well, but I could share documents if you want. It just depends on how technical you want to get. I could show you our kind of welcome packet that we give them. And this is, to be honest, this is probably a year's worth of learning, a year and a half really, but I have, we have bylaws. So, and I can share any of this type of stuff with you, but these are our bylaws that we have. We've rewritten these, and then we also are going to be kind of honing them as we kind of move around, but Kristen, I don't mean to move so fast.
Could I jump in and interrupt for just a moment here?
Yep.
Thank you. I think one of the things that's really interesting about your program is the number of people that are involved. I was really surprised by that, because I think most of us think in terms of appointing a young person to the city council in an ex officio situation, or maybe having a few people involved. You've got a lot more than that going on.
Okay, so I'll just tell you the basic structure. We have 5 members of executive, what we call executive members. They do run for office. I'm sure the first year that they're probably appointed, after the council starts. But so they run for office at the end of the year. They get elected by their peers. But we've got a chair, a vice chair, a public information officer who does all the Facebook and social media type stuff. And then we've got a treasurer. We don't have a huge budget, but you can do a lot with a little if you've got a good team and a community that's kind of on board to support. So, and then we also have a secretary who takes notes and minutes. So we try to really mimic how city government works. So they have to record the meetings and then send those notes out, and just kind of teaching them kind of like to mimic a clerk. And then, anyway, open meeting laws, kind of noticing meetings, and just teaching general responsibilities. So everything we do, we do mock city council meetings so that they can see how city council meetings work. But like I said, if you make yourself available for these types of opportunities, as far as time it takes to manage, I'm going to be honest, we at the city of Nampa don't have a huge budget. And so we don't have a lot of extra time. We're short on people. So as far as time management that it takes me for a typical meeting, I would probably say maybe 2 to 4 hours a week. And if we have an event that we have to go to, I would say that probably takes me about 2 days of planning, maybe a day and a half. And so it just depends on how much, but I've learned to be very fast and efficient, quickly do agendas. I use Canva, which is an online app it's basically you're tapping into a professional who's already built these flyers for you, and you just put in your verbiage and a picture. So I've learned to use tools like that to be able to very quickly put together mayor's teen council with as little time needed as possible, because I do have a lot of other duties. So time
Kristen,
management, you can do it.
How many kids are involved in this? You've got this executive collection of five people, but how many are regularly involved in the process?
This year, I'd say we probably have about 20 to 25 that come to most meetings, but I'm going to be honest that the first year our mayor took office, there was only 3 kids left in the entire mayor's teen council. And mayor's involvement is a big deal. And if the kids get the message that they're important, then they want to come and make time to go. But so now we've grown it from, we had about 10 to 15 last year to now we're up to about 20 to 25 regulars, and they bring their friends. When we start to put together, they also, during the summer, they put together their own agenda. So we've learned not to just let them put it together by themselves. So those are some lessons learned as we kind of put these structured activities, like these are definite, we're going to have these every year. We're going to do the speed dating for department introductions. We're going to do, and then they get to pick probably 4 or 5 things that they add to the schedule, because scheduling takes a lot of effort. So if you just kind of have pre-built scheduled activities, it saves you time for whoever is going to manage it, because I'm sure like Nampa, y'all probably don't have extra people just sitting around to do this type of work. So if you pre-fill out that schedule for them and then just give them a few options to fill in, they come up with great ideas, and then they get buy-in and it can get fun.
So do they come to the council and then ever give you a report of the council reports, or is it are these meetings monthly, or how often are they?
So they're twice a month. The executives do meet once a week. So they're either at a regular meeting or we're having executive meetings. And at the executive meetings prior to the mayor's teen council, that's where the executives, the teams just go through and make sure that we're ready for the next meeting. So if somebody needs to put together an agenda, then they can do that, make sure that's done. If we need to call somebody, a speaker, just to remind them that they have the event, then they assign that task out. And so the executives do meet every week. And what we usually do, if they've done a good job and genuinely were involved, is we'll write them a letter of recommendation for the colleges that they're going to. A mayor's letter can get people a long way for scholarships and things like that. And so that's just one thing that you can do to those executives, because they do spend a lot of time working and it's free. So yeah, it's twice a month. That's how often those meetings are, but you can have them once a month to start. If you're not sure how much time and resources you have to spend, that might be a good starting point.
And then do they come to the council to give them updates on what's going on with the committee?
I'm sorry, I did not understand your question. Well, the council usually, They get updates from the mayor. So she'll do that at the beginning of her remarks for the meeting. They do go to the council if they have an event that they'd like to invite them to, or maybe they want to get the bylaws updated, and the city council they do actually go through the approval process for bylaws. We do have a city council liaison that comes and mentors them, which is pretty impactful, to be honest. It's important to see both the legislative and the executive side. So we have a council member that's at almost all of the executive meetings. That's Sandy Levi. She does a good job. And then the mayor or the chief of staff is at all of the executive meetings or the meetings. So the mayor can't attend every single meeting, but she tries to either herself or the chief of staff attend.
Any other questions for Kristen? This is really fascinating, really interesting to hear how it's gone from a few people and now, I mean, regularly having 25 teens attend a meeting twice a month, I think is pretty significant. And I think that's a statement of how interested they are. I mean, how are they recruited? Do they just come and attend, or do they have to be invited, or how is it?
Well, we have capacity to have, we've in the past, before a mayor that was really heavily involved, and he was the mayor for about 12 years, he was up to about 65 to 70 students regularly attending. So we have capacity to have a lot more, but where we have low membership, we just say, if you fill out an application, you can come and join. It is free, and so I think that's a huge benefit. We have a lot of low income citizens in Nampa, and so it's good to give them the resource for free. And so that's kind of we want to get rid of those barriers. But so we work with school districts. We'll send them a flyer that we've developed at the end of the year. And we send it again at the beginning of the year. We've also had the kids do their own YouTube video inviting others to join. And so the schools have agreed to play those on their morning, announcements, or the teachers will hand them out, especially the government teachers are usually on board to give out that invitation for mayor's teen council. But right now we don't have a limit.
So
Kristen, you had mentioned that at least in the past, perhaps you have connected with similar programs from other communities. I think you had mentioned Meridian at one time.
Mm-hmm.
Is that ongoing?
Yes. Well, we still, Meridian and Caldwell, which they're great to reach out to if you want more resources as well on how to operate differently. I'm going to be honest, Meridian is great to reach out to, but their budget is significantly higher than Nampa. They actually do have a mayor's teen council budget. So sometimes that can be difficult to be mentored by somebody who's in a different, has different resources. So Caldwell's been a little bit better for us because the city just doesn't have, we are on a very tight budget. We don't have resources to designate. So really about $3,000 a year from the city council budget is what we operate under. But I'm going to be honest, if most of that is reserved for trips. So if you want to take the kids on trips as a chaperone, but you really could get by with probably $500 or $600 a year. And you could do that all on donations, just for pizza parties every once in a while and a couple of name tag materials. So you can do a mayor's teen council on a pretty small budget if you need to.
So the thought that crossed my mind just now is, when things have eased up a little bit, I don't know how they are in Idaho, whether you all are having meetings of more than 10 or 15 people, but it might be, I personally would like to go down and attend one of your meetings, see what happens, ask the kids, the teens, what they think about it, get some feedback from them, ask them how they think we should get something going here locally. So I think sometime in the near future, when things are eased up, maybe Gary and I or the other counselors who'd like to go down with us would make a trip down and see what it's like and get some feedback.
Of course, we also, so during this time, we had a meeting last week over Zoom with the students, and just kind of, we're talking to them about, COVID-19, what the graduation year, kind of what their plans are, how things are going. And then we have elections that we're going to be doing, I want to say next week over Zoom. So we're doing our elections over Zoom this year, but I'm sure I could ask Mayor Kling if we can just include anybody who would like to join to watch how those elections go.
So is this, is it primarily a school year program and then the summer is off? Is that, I'm gathering?
Yeah, so we use the summer to help to plan for next year. Usually we'll wait. I personally, to be honest, I like the break every once in a while from the extra duty. But so we'll wait usually a month after the kids are out of school for a month, kind of give them that break. And then we'll start to meet with the executive council on planning for next year. So, and like I said, I'm happy to share all of our documents, our welcome packet for the students. We give them a letter, a schedule that's put together nicely, and just some of the tricks like that. It seems like it would be natural, but it actually took me a year and a half to develop something somewhat, put together as far as that goes. So.
I kind of diverted you from the documents. Well, Steve, I think has some more questions for sure, but it would be nice to probably take a look at some of those.
That's what I was going to say. If we could, I think at the very least, seeing the bylaws, and I'm gathering that those bylaws were created by and passed by the council. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I believe the city council wrote those, but every year as we kind of expand who we are, so we've started to do subcommittees because we had enough students to break up and do projects. So we've got like a domestic violence advocacy against domestic violence subcommittee. And then we've got another one to do community projects. So we just kind of, as far as I've seen, it's much easier if you can kind of create a path for the students to focus their efforts on, so they're busy throughout the year. And so that's something we've kind of, but anyway, as we started to change how we operated for subcommittees and things like that, we've had to adjust the bylaws. And so those adjustments do go before city council and they are approved, and that's what we operate under. And I think that's what allows the council to be part of that whole thing. So I'll show you the bylaws really quick.
So does it count?
Go ahead, Marianne.
Does the council give them any direction at all, like asking them there's a project or there's a thought that the council is thinking about? Do they send them to the kids to let them mull it over and give us some advice, or what?
Oh, that is such a wonderful idea. So that's actually something we want to start next year. Meridian does have a teen council representative on their different boards and commissions. I think they put it down to just a few, but I think that is a wonderful idea. And yeah, that would be a good way to use them. We don't, our council doesn't, but I think that would be great.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So these are 5 pages, and if you ever take them on trips, we've had our legal department had to review waivers for even just field trips and things like that. And so some of that stuff we just didn't have.
Kristen, if I could interrupt, it looks like the only screen that we're seeing shows the file folder.
Okay, thank you for letting me know. Sorry,
Okay.
Let me get the document up and make sure I've got, okay. I apologize for that. Okay, so these are the bylaws. Can you see them now?
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Okay. Yep. So kind of, they're just 5 pages, a couple introductory, just defining the intent. There's kind of a, just basic mission type of a statement. We talk about officers or where it's located, where the meetings are going to be, how often they're going to be. And we do find this very helpful. We don't meet on, well, okay, so I've heard a few challenges with the meeting times and what evenings. So probably avoiding what, youth group church meetings are. Maybe Wednesday nights are not a good idea, but. And then special meetings have to be approved by the executives. Notice of the meeting. We don't have to do this publicly. So that is kind of an important note, is that they are not considered, I don't know about your open meeting laws in Oregon, but in Idaho, we're required to notice everything. And so the teen council doesn't fit under an official advisory to the city council. So they don't formalize any advice to the council. And so because they don't, we don't have to, open meeting law and notice all of their meetings, because they are students and we want them to be protected. We don't want them to be exposed to the public. We want them to be, anyway, So because they don't formally and officially advise the city council, we're protected from having to notice all of their meetings and do public open meeting laws with them. So, and this just goes over the basic duties and qualifications for the chairs. So we do have, they have to have been attended so many meetings. It looks like probably about 7 meetings in order to even run for any of the offices for next year. And this just talks about what their different duties are for the different officers. And subcommittees here, again, that's some stuff we started to lean more on this year.
It looks like something that I'd like to get a copy of that and read through it. I may also contact Meridian and Caldwell and see if they've got something similar.
Mm-hmm.
Are you aware of any of these types of things in Oregon? Maybe across the state line in Ontario?
I know that we attended the American Heart Association. They actually put, which I so appreciate because we have very limited time to plan large events. So the American Heart Association does a legislative day every year. I know they did one in Oregon, but basically they plan and they provide lunch for the students. All we had to do was provide transportation, which I think it cost us $250 to get a bus for the students to get to the state legislative office. But I know that there is some active mayor's teen council in Oregon because they did one of those legislative days for youth there. So there's some type of activity.
Yeah, I'll jump in if you don't mind, Mayor. I'm Stu, the Parks and Recreation Director. We at Oregon Recreation Park Association has a teen section, teen centers, and professionals that work with teens, and they do a lot of this kind of thing with teen councils, not necessarily mayors' teen councils, but teen councils in general. And yeah, there's a whole network of cities. Lake Oswego has the most robust program that I know about. The bigger cities on the west side have several programs, teen councils. They get together, they do network, they do interact with city council and do projects, together, different kinds of things. What about Kristen, service learning, leadership projects, support from the schools? We have struggled with support from the schools here. So do you have some tips maybe?
When you say support for, well, actually we at the mayor's office, I guess we're very fortunate. In fact, I know we're very fortunate. The mayor kind of reached out to the school district superintendent and asked for kind of if we have an event that's during the day, which we truly try to limit those, but we've asked for them to kind of authorize those as excused absence that don't count against their record. And so we really try to work with the school district office, and then they can push the information down to their schools. I guess charter schools have been great so far too. They've been working with us, and I guess we haven't had a whole lot of struggle, but we do try to respect and get their thoughts on things if we have questions or concerns about how they're going to take the information. So we try to get their input.
I think, Stu, that's a good point. I have a pretty good working relationship with Brett Baxter and with George Mendoza. I think if we structured something along these lines, I can't help but think they'd be really supportive of it. And since we've only got the one high school, it sounds like you have, Kristen, that you have multiple schools to deal with. We only have only one 10, grade 10 to 12 school here. So I'd like to think that they wouldn't balk at letting students off to have time to do stuff, but I don't know. I think in the process of talking about this, if the council decides to move forward with this sort of thing, we probably want to bring at least Brett Baxter, who's the principal of the high school, the Grand High School. Probably want to bring him in and have him give us some thoughts while we're mulling this over. I think that would be better than just to say, "Hey, Brett, we got this teen council, and now we want you to let them come have time off." I think it'd be better to bring them in earlier rather than later.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. The other resource we have in Union County is the Teen Council for the Union County Safe Communities Coalition. They're really active. They've got about 12 to 15 active members. They do prevention work, of course, around drugs and alcohol, but I think that it would behoove us to connect with them as well, as we move along with this. Kristen, one last question for me, and then I'll get out of here. Do they do anything for fun?
I think it's all fun, but I work for the government, so my idea of fun might be different. Yeah, I mean, they're involved in the whole process. So I know if I ran a meeting, it would be extremely boring, but just the way that the students run their own meetings, they do fun icebreakers all the time. And they're just kind of, and I don't know how other people look, but I let the kids joke around. So we don't have 100%, professionalism. It's not school. It's really a fun educational environment. So we're not super strict about, they can tell jokes, and really we just try to have a semi-relaxed environment. There's obviously times to be professional and mentor them on those times, especially when we're at the State House, all those types of, and if we're at a formal public meeting. But I think it's all fun, just the way we try to incorporate the meetings. We try to have a relaxed environment. So, and again, they're much better at having fun and taking charge of how to run the meetings in a fun way. I don't know how to have fun like they do.
Kristen, you had mentioned, I think, one time when we were talking that at one point you had actually done some kind of a field trip back to DC or something. Is that correct?
Yes, I had scheduled a DC trip, but I had to cancel it because it was scheduled for March, I think the 20th. So that was when all of this coronavirus stuff. But yeah, I had an entire agenda. I've gotten legal to review all of the forms. We have the parental consent forms. So I really have a really great itinerary for Washington, D.C. trips. And we got all of that paid for. The city didn't have to pay one dime, which again, we are on a very tight budget, and our citizens are on tight budgets. So spending money on a DC field trip might be difficult to justify, but when it's 100% funded from donations through businesses, that's a lot easier, and it's a really good mentorship opportunity. We do offer that to those hardworking executives because, like I said, they've worked every week. I text them at night if I need something, and so it is hard work, and so it's a really good way to kind of level out the year for them and just thank them for their work and kind of educate them. And like I said, I'm in the military, so we did have a very strict educational regiment for our Washington, D.C. trip. It was very filled with educational, Arlington National Cemetery. Yeah, just very busy, but a good way to learn about that national level of government.
Any other questions for Kristen? My only question is, if you, I guess maybe this is less of a question and more of a request. If you're going to do a Zoom session with them in the near future and it works for them, I would love to have an invitation to sit in and just see what they're doing and learn a little bit more firsthand about what happens at those meetings.
Yes, I will email the mayor after this and ask her assistant, and then get you on the schedule. So Gary, I can just email you and then maybe to Steve. Is it Mayor Clemens?
There's been a little confusion. Steve is actually our mayor. I'm the mayor pro tem, which often confuses people, but Mr. Clemens is actually our mayor.
I kind of gathered. I apologize for not using titles this evening, but thank you for your patience. So I can, I'll get your email address. I'm sure it's probably on the website, and send Mayor and her assistant an email.
I'm perfectly fine, Kristen, with you working with Gary on this, and he and I communicate pretty regularly about things that are happening on the council and other, elsewise. So, but yes, it's easy. Mayor at cityoflegrand.org. It'll get to me. Anything else for Kristen? Just a general sense from council. Does this sound like something we should keep moving with? Gary's sort of spearheaded, but I'll jump in and help him as we can. Is that, if I, head nod would be fine, and we'll just keep moving with it. Okay. All right. Thank you, Kristen. I appreciate it. And if there's no other questions, you're an hour ahead of us.
Okay. Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
It looks like it's sunny there.
It's really, I don't know. I haven't been outside a lot today, but it is beautiful out there. I can tell from my window.
Yeah, it's raining cats and dogs here, so maybe it's heading your way.
Yeah, probably. All right. Well, thank you so much for having me as a guest, and I appreciate all of your time. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Kristen.
Thank you. All right, Robert. Next item on the agenda is Adams Avenue Streetscape Future Phases. You and Kyle, I guess.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor and Council. During the retreat, we talked about what would a continuation of the streetscape project look like. And we were asked to kind of put together kind of a logical sequencing of future improvements. Kyle has done some really nice job with putting together kind of what it would look like. We have kind of some ballpark figures that we'll share. We don't want to be overly specific in terms of dollar amounts, because if we move forward with something, it'll be a competitively bid project. And so I'm always cautious about, kind of the more detailed, essentially the engineer's estimate of cost, but we can talk in kind of general terms. And Kyle is, I believe, prepared to kind of walk you through at whatever level of detail you'd like. But I think probably the best thing to do would be to have him put up in a screen share mode here in a minute, the kind of the aerial map that's color coded that shows what's already been done, what's currently being done, and then the various phases that we emailed out to you. So Kyle, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you if you're ready.
I think we are. So I'll just go right over to the screen share if it'll let me
I
do
didn't
it.
know you had the oval room set up, Kyle.
Well, I got a really great presentation. I think you're all going to love it. It's pretty outstanding. You're going to feel really great when we're all done with this.
Make it great again there, Kyle.
All right. Are you all able to see my screen now?
Yes.
All right. So what you have in this slide is a picture that came out of our standard specifications for the city. So when we adopted the downtown standard, part of that was originally identifying the areas in which that standard would be requested whenever upgrades were done. So as you can see, it stretches from 2nd Street along Adams Avenue all the way to Island. It also goes over to Washington and Jefferson. And we've kind of held to the core of that so far, but we do have a lot of areas that we can extend out to here in the future. So let's see if it's going to let me switch to the next. Here's what we call the pretty map that kind of shows what we've done up to this point. So each of the colors has a significance. The red section is all the areas that were completed in the first few phases. That stretches from the library over to Elm. The next portion we're doing is the orange portion, which extends along Washington between Elm and Fir. That's currently under construction. If you want to go take a look at what we do when we're doing one of these projects, they're hard at it every day here during the week. The other parts we broke apart, we kind of looked at what the phasing would be as if we wanted to extend the project along Adams Avenue from where we're at on Elm to Island. So we identified the first phase, phase 5, as being the block between Elm and Fur. So for reference, that's the movie theater, J.C. Penney's building, Wells Fargo. We only identified one block for that phase, and I'll kind of go to, it'll let me jump to the next one here. We only identified one block for this section. As on these pages, as you can see, we've marked in orange kind of what hurdles we have for that block. So here under the bike shop, we have a full basement supported all the way out to the curb. We have backfill. We have different chutes that were used back in the day to, you know, put coal or merchandise down through the sidewalk into the basement of the building here right next to the bike shop. J.C. Penney's and the movie theater, both full basements all the way out. And on the opposite side of the street, we have the dojo right next to the parking lot of Wells Fargo that has a very poor wall supporting the sidewalk. So traditionally in previous phases, we would go in, repair the wall, backfill the sidewalk so that we're not running into problems here in the short term. So that would be phase 5. Phase 6 is a 2-block section, which extends from Fur all the way down to Hemlock. Again, you're going to see some orange notations in between Fir and Greenwood. A lot of these are those chutes that we discussed of getting merchandise or heating materials down to the basements. The good part about those is generally we're not doing a lot of extra work. We can do some supported sidewalk using pan decking. There's either a stacked rock with grouting, or if we're really lucky, there's a concrete wall there that can support the pan decking. We've encountered those all over through the downtown and dealt with them. We've repaired some of the doors if they're still in place, but I don't believe there's any doors on these blocks. So these two phases, talking with Robert, one of the things we wanted to look at was these two phases together would probably equate to roughly about 1.4 million to get from Elm all the way down to Hemlock. Now we've separated out this third phase, what we call phase 7, Hemlock to Island, as a precautionary measure, as we know that ODOT is currently working on the lighted intersection of Island and Adams. We know that sometime in the future, they're going to be doing some work there. Some of that is precursor based on our information we're getting, working with them on these ramp designs for those corners. So staff would recommend that we kind of hold back on this block until we get a real definitive answer on what their plan is on that intersection, because we don't want to go through and rebuild these intersections accommodating those light pole masts and then have them be moved or some other changes coming along. So I'm going to go back to our pretty map here real quick. So the other colors on the pretty map that we've kind of laid out are the purple side street sections. So the estimate of 1.4 to go from Elm down to Hemlock does not include side streets. So those would be additional costs, and that would kind of be the question and deferred to the council on whether we're going to continue on down side streets. If you look back to our initial figure, it shows that we did include it as areas that would be, when improved, we would bring them up to the city standard, the new downtown standard. But whether we want to invest those funds on those areas, I guess, is one of those questions. So the last point that we had on the agenda of items to cover would really be the hurdles and other considerations that we need to take into account when looking at the completion of these. One of the first ones would be the Jefferson truck route. Although it's not an active project, it is still brought up from time to time as something that may be sponsored, funded by the state. That would fund the reconstruction of Jefferson from 3rd all the way through Hemlock. So I did not include any further phasing colors on Jefferson. We have taken care of most of the blocks with curbs, kind of the low-hanging fruit, if you will. The rest of them would require some design work and dealing with loading docks and some other commercial properties that might make it a little more difficult. Another one to think about is whether we want to start planning the extension from the library to the west. The state has done some work on the corner ramps there. We already do have a electrical service installed near McLean's dental office that was put in when those upgrades were put in. So again, there's some low-hanging fruit over there. One of the concerns would be residential versus commercial. So on Washington, we see a shift around between Fir and Greenwood away from a more commercial to drifting to a residential type feel. I don't know if the foot traffic down there is going to be as high of a priority as the corridor of Adams Avenue. And then the last huge hurdle I have written down would be the SAC Annex basement. Not a whole lot different than what we've encountered on Adams Avenue, but it does have a full basement extending all the way to the curb on Fir and on Washington. And from what I've been told, there is a tunnel that goes to US Bank, and we don't know what we're going to uncover if we decide to crack into that one. And so I think with that, I've covered most of the information as quickly as I could and open it up to some general discussion.
Kyle, one thing that I had been thinking about, Adams Avenue, you know, obviously going right down to the middle of all this, is ODOT in charge of that? Are they wanting us to take care of that? What's the status of that right now?
Well, Adams Avenue is the state's jurisdiction from curb face to curb face. So there hasn't been any official request or talk, but I know that staff at ODOT has expressed that they're more than interested for us to take Adams. I don't know that we would really want to at this point.
Right.
They have we have no expertise in stoplights. Not something I think that we want to take on. They're very expensive from a maintenance standpoint. They do have it on the list of being white topped in the near future. And for those who don't know, white topping would be that they would come in and grind down the surface and then replace it with concrete. It wouldn't be a reconstruction, but it would create a new surface that should have a lifespan between 20 and 40 years. When they had the ADA compliance lawsuit, out of the funds that were allotted for those type of projects was diverted to reconstructing ADA ramps throughout the state. So I think it pushed us back. I think last I heard, we were allotted for 2022.
The white topping, Kyle, kind of gets to where I was headed on this. It's been probably about 13 years or so ago. I spent some time up in Canada, in particular Jasper, Alberta, and their downtown area was very interesting in terms of what they had done, including the crosswalks over their main street, which were not unlike the ones we have right now, but they included figures in them with some kind of substance like grizzly bears and elk, and it was pretty striking along with some of the other things they had done with the street itself. So that's why I was headed this way.
I know back when they did the last construction, I believe it was in '85, the city did request that the crosswalks be a different colored of concrete, which we see down there today. And as a result of that, I think some of those crosswalks are now our responsibility, because we do have a back and forth going whenever a pothole appears in those on whose responsibility it is to fix it.
Kyle, do you want to go ahead and stop your screen sharing? We can jump back to it if someone has a specific thing, but
yep.
That'd be
Thank
great.
you. I was
Perfect.
just going to ask that. So Kyle, I don't know that I missed it or not. 1.4 for the 5th phase. If we add the side streets in, what are you talking about then?
So on the side streets, a good general rule of thumb of what we've seen is about $100,000 per side per block. So if you were to do the full block of Fur from Adams to Jefferson, it would be roughly $200,000.
Right. And then what about, I mean, just give us the whole cost now if we were just to decide to, get the money and do the next 5 and 6 and then add the sidewalks, the side streets in. So I'm guessing, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, it's probably 4 million roughly.
I wouldn't say that much. I would say that, for this one, we kind of looked at completing the Adams corridor. And you're looking at 1.4 for doing between Elm and Hemlock. $400,000 would be from Hemlock to Island. So you're 1.8 million roughly to get Adams Avenue core done to Island.
Did you say 8 million?
1.8.
1.8. Okay. Whew. Whoa. My 4 million was a little off, but it still is a little off.
About 2.5, I think, Mayor.
And what did the big H cost? I wasn't on council when that decision went forth. I think that was like 2.5.
I would have to go pull records to give you an exact number. I think our contract amount at the beginning, I want to say, was around 1.4. We got 2 basements that got included in that one. I think the basement along the side of the bike shop was included as an added alternative on the base bid. We then ended up adding by change order the Jacobson basement, which is where Alpine Archery was. That was around another $150,000. Also included in that project was doing alleyways between Elm and Depot, both between Adams and Washington and Adams and Jefferson. So there was a lot of additional pieces to that one. I would say final cost probably around 1.7 off the top.
Yeah, I think it was right around 1.7.
So Robert, are we paying on that now as a loan, or are we?
Yeah, we bonded for the big H, and we also bonded for the Adams Avenue streetscape. So we have debt service on both of those right now in urban renewal.
Robert, how does that impact our ability to apply funds to economic development? I mean, actual businesses, operations that offer us full-time jobs. I mean, the streetscape is great, but the economic advantages are temporary.
Yeah, Gary, thanks for the question. The short answer is what it would really impact, I think, is the under levy amount to put dollars into the city's general fund. So what we would do, in my view, what we would do is continue to fund our core economic development programs and then identify the debt service that would be added on top of that. And then we would under levy whatever is left over. So I don't see it as something that would jeopardize the funding of our core economic development programs. The caveat to that is all of the expenditures that we're doing come off of our maximum indebtedness figure. So in terms of, from a cash flow standpoint, is how I answered your question. Would we be able to continue to do our core economic development pieces? The answer to that is yes. It would impact the under levy, but both our core economic development projects and our additional streetscape come off of the maximum indebtedness.
So my only question is with what we have going on and the uncertainty of the money that we're going to be having coming in the next 2 years, well, why would we put ourselves in a position to take away our under levy?
That's a very good question, and it's the same one that's in my mind. I mean, it would be, I think aesthetically, it would be pleasing to see a continuation of the improvements that have already been made. My my gut feeling is along what Justin is saying. Do we have to do this right away? Or do we want to sort of step back and wait to see what the next couple of years are? I mean, we're fortunate that our basis for revenue is property taxes, and not a sales tax, and so we're not seeing a real immediate impact of COVID-19, but who knows what the long-term impact is going to be, and maybe this is something we need to be a little more cautious with.
Yeah,
I think we need to revisit this in a year, and see what happens in the fall.
Yeah, just to be clear, the earliest that we would do something like this would be 21-22. We did not include this in our proposed budget that the budget committee has approved. So the soonest that we could do it is the 21-22 fiscal year. And I think that the reason that we're having this conversation is coming out of the retreat. The discussion of the council/agency was, what would the next piece of the Adams Avenue streetscape look like? Where should we go? What would it cost, so that we're better prepared to have a more complete discussion? And so that's why we're having this conversation now. And that was put together clearly before we were dealing with the COVID-19. So, and again, we're not proposing to do anything for the 2021 budget cycle.
Robert, when would you need
Go
a
ahead, Jim.
decision by in order to start in the 21-22 cycle?
It would be something that we would address as, and this is my standard answer, as part of the retreat. And we'd really need to have from the council in January, actually the agency in January, guidance to start putting in place the things that we would need to do to include it in the budget. And so the soonest we could really get serious about this would be the January, February timeframe. We'll have a little bit better feel for where we are, but realistically, I don't know that I would be comfortable proposing a project like this until probably the 22-23 budget year. Just simply because I don't know that we're going to be in a place in January where we can really evaluate whether or not we should be making a $1.5 million investment of using economic development dollars that could be better used for projects to help us better recover from what we're seeing right now.
Well, I would agree. I was one that really wanted to see this happen, but recognizing at the time when I suggested all of this, we weren't in the same position as we are now. So we have to step back and look at that and say we really can't do it in 21-22, I don't think.
Yeah, I would agree.
I think so too. I think the other thing that you mentioned, Robert, was no effect on current economic development projects and expenditures, a likely reduction in under levy revenues. But then the big thing for me is the total indebtedness.
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine over the next 2 years that we're going to push spend $1.5 million on other things. But I'm not, I don't know where we are right now in terms of total indebtedness, but I'm pretty sure that we're more than halfway towards the max that we can have. And this is a project plus other things that we might do that's just going to move us closer to that maximum indebtedness.
Yeah, I think Steve thinks. I think the key piece, the key takeaway, is as we start getting closer to the end of the road on the current urban renewal in max indebtedness, we really need to be thinking about, is this a project that we're going to complete? What portion of it are we going to complete? And to essentially put a fence around the dollar figure associated with doing this, if that's something that we want to make sure happens before the urban renewal agency district sunsets. Because it needs to be a conscious decision and a programmatic decision on how are we going to spend the last of our economic development funds that are coming out of urban renewal.
Very good. Yes, agreed. Any other questions for Kyle or for Robert on this? My sense is from the council that we might revisit this during the next council retreat in January, February next year. But the likelihood of moving forward for the 21-22 year is low. It might not be until, as Robert has suggested, the 22-23 fiscal year. And then that would put us out in, I'm assuming that would put us out into a council retreat in January of 22 to get things going and start getting ducks in the row.
Yep.
That about right, Robert?
It is.
I do believe though that we need to finish out the street project at some point because the town looks just half done. It is not complete. I think we told the people when we started, we told our community when we started, this was something we were going to complete. We didn't give them a date, but we did say we were going to complete it.
I think that's Robert's suggestion, is that before the urban renewal district gets anywhere near its maximum indebtedness, that we wall off a chunk of money that will be put towards this effort for completeness. And I would agree with you, Marianne. And I saw Gary shaking his head. I don't like half baked.
Right.
And right now we're half baked, and
right.
We need to, we need to sometime get it done.
Right. But we have to be conscious of what's happening in our community right now. And we can't take that on right now.
Yes, I don't see this as a priority for us for the next couple of years.
No.
Okay. Anybody else? Any other questions?
So Kyle, I noticed that office you're in looks kind of expensive. Maybe we could save some funds that way.
This is my home office.
Okay.
I got to revisit our salary structure.
Yeah, no kidding. I'm assuming you put up some type of green screen behind you.
No, this one's not a green screen. This is actually without.
Wow.
Yeah.
Looks pretty good.
It pulled it off. You can see a little bit of problems around the head, but other than that, it does pretty well without a green screen.
All right. So unless anybody has anything else, we can wrap this up, and we'll come back tomorrow night for about all of 5 minutes, and that might even set a new record.
That's
right?
my goal.
Okay.
I don't know if I have 5 minutes to give tomorrow night, but we'll try.
Okay.
I've got 4 of you. I'm happy.
All right. If you can't make it, Marianne, that's fine. We've got a quorum. We'll be good.
Okay.
All right. We're adjourned then, and we'll see you all tomorrow night.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay.
Take care.
Thanks.